Well, fresh from that very public spat with the South Australian Premier, I spoke with Energy Minister Josh Frydenberg. Minister, thank you for joining me. Are you glad to be out of South Australia? It seems to have been more sledging down there than the cricket.
It was a bit unedifying of the Premier to hijack the press conference that we were doing, and a very positive announcement indeed that the Commonwealth, through the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, was partnering with AGL to put in place a virtual power plant. Some 1,000 households and businesses would be connected with solar PV and batteries, and their surplus capacity would be put into the grid, reducing the need to build it out further.
If I can interrupt for a moment, I mean, he did interrupt you, like I'm doing now, and we've heard how the Premier feels. Do South Australians, more broadly, have a right to feel badly treated by the federal government?
Not at all. What South Australians should be asking themselves is, how did the Labor government that has been in office for some 14 years get them into such a mess when it comes to energy policy? You see, there's been an over-reliance on intermittent sources of power, namely wind and solar, to the point that they don't have that baseload generation available. And we heard just yesterday the head of Alinta repeat the statement that he offered the South Australian government the opportunity to maintain the northern coal-fired power station. Unfortunately, with the major penetration of renewables into the South Australian grid, some 42% coming from wind and solar, that meant his business had to close. And since that time,
it is a bit of a mess,
much greater vulnerability.
Yeah, it is a bit of a mess, though, Minister. I mean, there has been criticism of the energy market operator in terms of calls to load shed in South Australia, and really a feeling that Alan Finkel's review was not going to deliver solutions fast enough for the state. Well,
they should have been preparing the answers to their problems well before today. We've been saying for some time they needed more storage, and indeed the Commonwealth stands ready to work with South Australia when it comes to battery storage and indeed pumped hydro. We announced a project that we'll be working on with Energy Australia through ARENA for a pumped hydro facility in the Upper Spencerville Gulf. These are important storage opportunities that should have been pursued by South Australia well before. Also, it's important to get more gas into the system, and yesterday's meeting with the major LNG players, which the Prime Minister led that discussion, was very, very positive, the outcome of that, which meant that we won't be having the shortfalls that have been forecast when it comes to gas markets in the years ahead. So I'm very pleased with some of the recent outcomes that we've achieved.
Well, in turn, of course, the Premier, Jay Weatherill, has announced his own plan for South Australia, and particularly to go it alone. His comments today to you seemed premeditated. He was very angry and presumably very concerned that you might shut down his idea of some sort of autonomy in South Australia. Now, you're taking legal advice on this, but just what could the federal government do to stop South Australia going off-grid effectively?
We need to understand that the national electricity market has served Australia well for some 20 years, and it's based on the fact that we have an interconnected system that's more than 5,000 kilometres in length, going from Port Douglas down to Port Lincoln across the Bass Strait into Tasmania. And South Australia relies on the interconnectivity, and particularly the some 25% of its power that will come at any one time through the interconnector from the brown coal-fired power stations in the Latrobe Valley. And it's very important that that role is centralised within the Australian energy market operator, and that they can direct traffic, if you like. Now, this announcement by Jay Weatherill gives particular powers to their energy minister over and above what is currently available under the national energy market rules. And what I'm concerned about is retaliatory action by other states who will seek to preserve their energy security if they feel it's threatened by decisions taken by South Australia. So we're taking legal advice. Let's not jump the gun as to what will take place after that. But certainly it feels that the announcement by South Australia on those new powers does breach the spirit of those national electricity market rules.
Yes. You're clearly not on speaking terms, at least at the moment, with the Premier. How will you go forward with these negotiations?
Well, I have a fantastic relationship with the South Australian Energy Minister and Treasurer, Tom Koutsantonis. In fact,
yes, I think you said he should be Premier this morning.
We shared a bite to eat the other night, and we do work cooperatively around the COAG energy table. But what Jay Weatherill did today was he sought to go on the attack because he must have thought that offence is the best form of defence, and it was a bit unedifying to see him come to an event which he wasn't scheduled to come to, simply to launch into that public tirade against the federal government. And he says that the federal government is anti-South Australia. Well, what about the $50 billion worth of defence investment that we recently made? What about the range of other initiatives that we're announcing today?
But to sum up, if South Australia, to sum up on South Australia, if South Australia did go it alone, you see higher electricity prices in South Australia?
Well, obviously a number of their measures will increase prices over time, and there has to be a trade-off between energy security and, of course, other considerations. But what we are concerned about is by giving power to direct AEMO, which they don't currently have unless it's emergency situations, you could see an impact on the supply-demand dynamic, for example, in Victoria, and that would impact on prices not just in South Australia but outside as well.
OK, let's move to this big announcement on the Snowy. It ticks a lot of boxes, obviously, for the government. No new dams, but the water is actually going to be working a lot harder. Can you guarantee to those downriver, the Murray, the Murrumbidgee, that actually the water release licence will be unchanged?
Well, what we've been told is that it won't affect the irrigators. You're not going to be requiring new dams. And as you know, it will produce some 50% more power out of the Snowy Hydro, some 2,000 megawatts, which is greater than the amount that is currently generated out of Hazelwood, which will close at the end of this month.
But as I say, that water's going to have to work harder, isn't it?
It is, but that's how the pumped hydro system works, Ticky. And effectively, we're looking at building 3 new sets of tunnels and systems, some 27 kilometres long, that can move water up and down a steep area and then pump down when you actually need it most to create the electricity.
And nationally funded, state and federal?
New development there for some 30 years, since the 1970s.
Nationally funded, government funded, state and federal?
Well, the Prime Minister's made very clear he wants this to happen, and the Commonwealth stands ready to help finance such a project. But the Snowy Hydro themselves have also made clear that they're a profitable organisation and that they have been working on ideas such as these for some time. The ability to produce out of this natural icon even more power generation at a time when we do need it across the system, and to be renewable power, baseload power.
But you're saying it'll be a
frequency
PPP.
control and cylindry services
Sorry,
we
Minister.
have, that would be a very good thing.
But a PPP of sorts, a public-private partnership you're looking at?
No, I mean, they're your words, they're not mine. What we are looking at is for this feasibility study to take place, and, you know, the work could begin not soon after that.
All right, can I finally ask you about
the work could begin soon after that, sorry.
OK. Can I finally ask you about the meeting between the big LNG companies and the Prime Minister in Canberra? Now, Bill Shorten says all this talk about the idea of a social licence is just like a social licence for the banks, and they won't take any notice of it. And in particular, I think there's a concern more broadly that prices will not come down even if supply is secured.
We'd expect Bill Shorten to say that because he doesn't have any ideas of his own to get more gas into the system. Now, this problem has been brewing for some time. As you know, the ACCC had warned about the challenges that we were facing on the east coast when it came to the gas market as a result of the moratoria that are in place, as a result of more LNG going for export and the falling exploration as the oil prices fall at a global level. So we do need to get more gas into the domestic market, and what the Prime Minister got yesterday was a commitment that those companies will meet the needs of the gas market so the predicted shortfalls in the years ahead do not occur.
Josh Frydenberg, I thank you very much for your time.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Ticky.